the instant asset write-off is a scheme which was introduced by the federal government to stimulate growth and investment in small business. Now, for those who don't know, the instant asset write-off has actually been around for a bit over a decade. It actually came out, it's actually more than a decade. It came out during the Julia Gillard years. And really what it is, it's always come in different forms. Previously, it used to be only $1,000 write-off, and then it built up to $20,000. And essentially what happened was it stayed around the $20,000 mark till we got to COVID. And when it got to COVID, it increased to 150,000 and then it increased to an infinite amount. So you could have instant asset write off on whatever you purchased. And then they've scaled it back down after COVID. And what the unique thing about this law is, it's always a 1 year measure. What happens is every budget year, it actually has to be renewed. It gets renewed every year because it was originally a temporary measure, and this temporary measure has been in place for over 10 years. And what essentially it means in this current format is it allows businesses with a turnover of under $10 million. Now, that term aggregated really applies if you have multiple businesses. So if you have multiple businesses, you've got to add them up all together. So if you're the sole owner of three businesses, you've got to add all the turnover or income, so how much you invoice or sell, to check your eligibility. If you meet the turnover threshold, what you're allowed to do is you're allowed to immediately deduct the full cost of assets up to $20,000. Now, in the traditional accounting and tax world, when you buy an asset, let's just say a car, the most common asset for most small business owners, normally you'd have to write it off over multiple years. So if I bought a $20,000 car, previously I'd have to write it off over 5 years. So get a deduction for $4,000 every year until the fifth year when I've fully written it off. What this law allows you to do is instead of having to write it off over multiple years, you can get a deduction upfront for the full amount. So it gets treated just like a standard business expense. You get a full deduction in the year you spent it. Now, previously, it was obviously the same rule applied for the current financial year we're about to end. It actually does cover the 2024-25 financial year. And what will happen is this scheme will go for another year and it'll scale back down to $1,000. That's what it is currently in the books. But I have no doubt that it will be rolled over again for another $20,000 in the future. But I'll put an asterisk on that. That is my a wild guess, but we'll see how we go. What we're discussing is covering the 2024-2025 financial year. The asset must be first used or installed ready for use for a taxable purpose between 1 July 2024 and 30 June 2025. What that means installed ready for use is if you buy a car, you have to have the key. You can't just order it and wait for 18 months on back order. You actually have to have the car ready to go. A machine, as I said, has to be installed ready for use before 30 June. But the advantage of this scheme is you're allowed to write off multiple assets at once. So for instance, if I bought 5 pieces of machinery for $10,000 each, I can claim the instant asset write-off and get a deduction for $50,000 in one big go. So it can actually work in your favor if you time it right, so you can use it to your advantage.